McDonald's has been hit by its first fall in global sales since the start of the pandemic.
McDonald's is struggling. The brand is reporting a drop in sales worldwide. They're down by 1%. McDonald's shares have tanked by 15%.
McDonald's is shutting down its experimental beverage-led restaurant concept after about a year and a half.
What if the next major American economic warning sign isn't on Wall Street, but at your local drive-thru? What if the story of rising tariffs, global trade wars, and inflation isn't just about headlines in Washington, but about the price of a burger, a box of fries, and the jobs tied to them? Because right now, one of the most recognizable brands in the world is navigating one of the toughest stretches in its modern history. McDonald's, the company that helped define affordable fast food in America, is facing store slowdowns, restructuring moves, and mounting financial pressure. And the reason, according to analysts, is a complex mix of tariffs, rising supply costs, and shifting consumer behavior. This isn't just a restaurant story, it's an economic story. And it might be a preview of what's coming next. For decades, McDonald's stood for three things: speed, consistency, and value. You could walk into nearly any location in the country and know exactly what you were getting. The taste was predictable, the service was fast, and most importantly, for millions of families, the price felt manageable. Even during economic downturns, fast food often performed well. When budgets tightened, people traded down from casual dining to quick service chains. But this time feels different. Over the past year and a half, McDonald's attempted to evolve. New beverage-focused concepts, menu innovation, modernized store experiences. The goal was growth. Instead, the company ran into a storm it didn't fully control. Sales growth slowed, customer traffic softened, and operating costs climbed faster than anticipated. Then came the trade shock. In early 2025, a renewed tariff framework under an America First expansion imposed significant import taxes on goods coming from key trading partners, including Canada and Mexico. Rates began around 25% in certain categories, with the potential for higher escalations in agricultural and packaging sectors. On paper, the policy was designed to protect American industry. In practice, it triggered swift retaliation. Canada introduced countermeasures targeting billions in U.S. exports, including beef and dairy. The European Union responded with its own trade penalties. Agricultural markets reacted quickly. For a company like McDonald's, which operates inside a highly optimized global supply network, that shift mattered immediately. Fast food supply chains are built on precision. Beef, cheese, potatoes, sauces, paper goods, and packaging materials often cross borders multiple times before reaching a restaurant. The system is designed for efficiency, minimal storage, fast turnover, controlled costs. Tariffs disrupt that balance. When import taxes rise, suppliers pass along higher prices. When retaliation hits agricultural exports, domestic pricing volatility increases. When packaging materials face new duties, operating costs climb further. In recent months, beef prices in the U.S. have risen sharply compared to historical averages. Dairy inputs have become more volatile. Potato processing costs have increased. Packaging materials have seen tariff-related pressure. For an industry where net margins can hover around 5% or less, even a small cost spike can be significant. For McDonald's, the math became harder. Promotional pricing began cutting deeper into profits. Value bundles, once a dependable traffic driver, produced thinner returns. At the same time, customers, facing broader inflation pressures in housing, groceries, and utilities, started becoming more selective. The value perception shifted. When a quick service meal approaches the price of cooking at home, families reconsider. U.S. same-store sales experienced noticeable softness compared to earlier growth cycles. Global sales showed strain in key regions. Investors reacted cautiously, and stock performance reflected uncertainty. Inside corporate leadership, the focus turned to stabilization, cost controls, menu adjustments, supply diversification, operational restructuring. One controversial response reportedly involved expanding processing and production partnerships outside the United States to reduce exposure to tariffed imports. From a financial perspective, diversifying production can protect margins. By adjusting where ingredients are processed or sourced, companies attempt to bypass higher import costs. But such moves come with reputational risk. McDonald's has long been intertwined with American identity. Any perception of shifting jobs overseas during a domestic economic squeeze can spark backlash. At the same time, competitors moved quickly. Rival chains introduced aggressive discount campaigns. Limited time value menus returned across the industry. Price wars intensified as brands competed for cautious consumers. In a tightening economy, loyalty weakens when price gaps widen. One controversial response reportedly involved expanding processing and production partnerships outside the United States to reduce exposure to tariffed imports. From a financial perspective, diversifying production can protect margins. By adjusting where ingredients are processed or sourced, companies attempt to bypass higher import costs. But such moves come with reputational risk. McDonald's has long been intertwined with American identity. Any perception of shifting jobs overseas during a domestic economic squeeze can spark backlash. At the same time, competitors moved quickly. Rival chains introduced aggressive discount campaigns. Limited time value menus returned across the industry. Price wars intensified as brands competed for cautious consumers. In a tightening economy, loyalty weakens when price gaps widen, and McDonald's, traditionally seen as the value anchor, suddenly found itself defending that reputation. The ripple effects extend beyond restaurant counters. McDonald's operates one of the largest supply ecosystems in the world. Farmers, ranchers, food processors, trucking companies, packaging plants, franchise owners, and hourly employees are all connected to its performance. When corporate margins tighten, the pressure cascades outward. Some food processing facilities have reduced output. Local suppliers face uncertainty. In certain regions, restaurants have adjusted operating hours to manage labor and cost pressures. The U.S. food service sector employs over 14 million workers. While McDonald's remains financially substantial and far from collapse, its current strain illustrates how sensitive the industry is to policy shifts and cost volatility. Economists often describe tariffs as a tax paid by importers, but in reality, those costs frequently flow through the system. Suppliers raise prices, restaurants adjust menus. Consumers absorb the difference. The broader philosophical debate centers on trade-offs. Protectionist policies aim to strengthen domestic production and reduce reliance on foreign supply chains. But in a globally integrated economy, many industries depend on cross-border efficiency. Fast food is a prime example. Ingredients are sourced globally. Processing networks span continents. Packaging components originate from multiple countries. When trade friction increases, costs ripple outward. For American households already navigating higher living expenses, discretionary spending becomes cautious. Dining out is one of the first categories families trim when budgets tighten. That creates a feedback loop. Lower traffic leads to slimmer profits. Slimmer profits drive restructuring. Restructuring can lead to workforce reductions or store closures. And those local impacts affect community economies. In response, McDonald's leadership has emphasized long-term resilience. The company retains a massive global footprint, significant brand equity, and deep cash reserves. It has weathered recessions, commodity spikes, and changing consumer tastes before. Digital ordering, loyalty programs, and drive-thru optimization continue expanding. International markets still offer growth opportunities. Menu engineering strategies aim to balance affordability with profitability. But uncertainty remains? If additional tariff rounds are introduced, cost pressures could intensify. If inflation persists, consumer spending may remain fragile. If global supply chains face further disruptions, from geopolitical tensions to shipping bottlenecks, volatility could increase. For now, McDonald's is adapting rather than collapsing. But its current challenges highlight a larger truth. In today's interconnected economy, policy decisions don't stay in Washington. They show up in grocery bills. They show up in menu prices. They show up in hiring decisions. And they show up in stock charts. The Golden Arches have long symbolized American business strength: scalable, efficient, globally dominant. Now they symbolize something else as well: how vulnerable even massive corporations can be to rapid shifts in trade dynamics and consumer sentiment. The bigger question is what comes next. Will supply chains become more localized, even if that means higher prices? Will trade tensions ease, stabilizing input costs? Will consumers adjust to a new normal where fast food is no longer the cheapest option? Or will competitive pricing wars force margins even thinner across the entire industry? For smaller independent restaurants, the stakes are even higher. They lack the global diversification and capital reserves that large chains possess. If a multinational brand must restructure to protect profitability, local operators may struggle more severely under the same macroeconomic pressures. This moment may ultimately become a case study in economic cause and effect. Tariffs designed to shield domestic sectors can unintentionally strain industries that rely on international sourcing. Corporate strategies intended to preserve shareholder value can conflict with public perception about domestic jobs. Consumers seeking affordability drive pricing battles that compress margins further. Everything connects. So the next time you see a menu price that feels higher than expected, or notice a location operating on reduced hours, remember: behind that small change is a vast chain of policy decisions, trade negotiations, supplier contracts, and economic calculations. This isn't simply about burgers and fries. It's about how global trade policy intersects with everyday life. McDonald's will likely endure. The brand has survived decades of transformation. It has adapted to health trends, economic recessions, and technological revolutions. But the current environment represents a stress test, a test of pricing power, a test of supply chain flexibility, a test of consumer loyalty, and perhaps most importantly, a test of how economic policy shapes real-world outcomes. Because when tariffs rise, costs don't disappear, they move. They move through factories, through farms, through trucks and ports and warehouses. They move through boardrooms and balance sheets. And eventually, they move to the customer. The Golden Arches may continue to glow above highways and city streets. But right now, they also serve as a reminder. In the battle between policy and pricing, the final impact is often felt at the checkout counter. And the outcome of that battle is still unfolding.